So we are recording, yes. And welcome everyone. I'm not seeing the sign that it is recording. Is that showing as recording for you, Lauren?
It did pop up a second ago at the top.
Mine says Bronwyn's recording in the top corner.
Okay, good. All right, so we're all good. I just don't have it. It's not popping up on my screen, but great. All right, so welcome everyone to this Minecraft cluster innovation cluster meeting on Minecraft for students with additional needs. And we're really honoured today to have some fabulous speakers join us and some cool activities to do. If you want to ask a question, keep the chat open and I'll keep an eye out for questions. We would like to ask questions along the way, so and you can take the microphone if you would like. We just wait until there's a kind of opportune time. But certainly we want you to ask a question, not go away with a question burning that you want to raise. We're going to be talking for about an hour, and we're going to start off with, I'm going to start off with a little bit of presentation to get us going, and then I'm going to hand over to our special guest speakers, who I will introduce shortly. So let's get underway and make sure I'm sharing the desktop. And you should now see the opening screen for our session. So today you will see there's a link there, bit.ly Minecraft additional needs. That's the link to download the PDF file of the slides today. So if you need any of the links that are included, that's the best way to get them, or Lauren will drop them in the chat. And when Lauren's speaking, I will do the same. So if there are any links, we'll try and drop them into the chat, or you can download this PDF. And that's our hashtag, EduVicMinecraft. So if you want to tweet out anything or any screen captures that you make during the session, that'd be cool too. And we will have, I've already been contacted by people far and wide, as far as Seattle and Croatia, who wanted to attend this session because they saw the topic and were very excited. So they've already asked me to send them the link to the recording when we've completed. So we'll have an audience beyond the teachers who are in the room today. Okay, so my experience with virtual communities stems back almost 15 years now from working with a program called Quest Atlantis, which some people still teaching remember, which was a global virtual world. We had 55,000 students in 52 countries around the world, and I trained a lot of teachers in that space. And then I went to, was working with some teachers and Minecraft designers in a project called Massively Minecraft. That was about 9 or 10 years ago when Minecraft first started up in the vanilla version of Minecraft. And that was an out-of-school server for kids to get together from around the globe and share experiences, share stories, and essentially to find their tribe. And it was a lot of kids ranging in age from about 5 to 16. And indeed, an 8-year-old in there actually taught me how to use Minecraft. And that's Megan Town's son, if any of you know Megan. So that was a really great experience. And it, again, topped off what I knew from Quest Atlantis about why virtual communities are important. And then moving into Minecraft Education Edition. And I suppose my part of this start of this story is to make a plea for you to all look beyond single player worlds and to consider the shared experience of multiplayer and taking the deep dive that involves, but also to play with your students and be the trusted adult in the world, not the police officer. And so there's research around on teens and tweens in online social spaces that shows that they learn best when they're in spaces with trusted adults. And so you have to think about what that means to be a trusted adult. But for me, the story that encapsulates what I found out about virtual worlds as social spaces for kids was a student I was working with originally in Quest Atlantis, and the teacher told me this student had not written. He was a bit of an isolated student. He hadn't written very much. His literacy level was low, and he was in year 6. And the kids were all making a book at the end of the year to give to year 2, a storybook. And he wrote a story about how a strange woman came to their school and taught them about this new world called Quest Atlantis. And yeah, I liked being the strange woman. But the lovely thing that absolutely tore my heart out was at the end, the kids were asked to summarize what they'd learnt out of this experience. And this boy wrote, "I learnt that I can make friends." Now you think about that for a year 6 child to have articulated that. And I really cried, and the teacher gave me the book to keep, which I do have in a treasured spot. But for this child, this was a place where he became admired by the other kids in the class. He found himself, and he found ways to be a leader, a mentor, and a friend with other kids. And, you know, that's really what I've seen over that nearly 15 years in these kinds of game spaces, is something beyond the curriculum and ticking boxes of what students have learned. So that leads us to our fabulous speakers that we have today. And so we're going to start with Catherine, and I'm just going to show a little bit of a video. Kate's a friend to Australia because she's been here for the ACME Education in Games conference, and gave a stellar presentation there, and has been communicating with lots of people. And she's been a research partner with Matt, who will be speaking in a little bit as well. But let's just watch a little bit of this.
Video games are sometimes seen as nothing more than a way to kick back and waste some time, but one expert is showing there's a lot more to it than that.
Now, Dr. Kate Ringland is an autism researcher from Northwestern University who says that games can help break down social barriers for children. She's in Australia to attend the Melbourne International Games Week. She joins us now. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. Now, one of the games that you're talking about here is Minecraft. Now, Kate, I've got to admit, I've tried playing Minecraft. I don't enjoy it. I feel disconnected. I'm confused. I don't know where I am. And the one time I played, I got bullied. All my house was destroyed. My pigs were killed. I was killed by zombies after a while. So I don't see how Minecraft could actually help a kid that's autistic.
Well, that sounds horrible. I'm sorry that you experienced that. Yeah, so Minecraft, in itself, you know, it's a video game, and there are people in there, and apparently you happen to find a world that had kind of not so nice people in it. But there's actually another world called Autcraft that is specifically for kids with autism, and they have a bunch of rules in place in the world so that people don't behave like that.
How is it, though? Explain it to us. How does Autcraft actually help someone with autism and I think you call it here, creates a scaffold for kids to learn social behavior. How does that happen?
Right. So they use social rules. So there are things in there like, you know, don't be mean to one another. Keep yourself safe. Be friendly. There's encouragement to share. So it's a very social space. And there are parents in there, and they're playing with their kids. So there's some, you know, parenting and teaching going on in the game. But the thing about Minecraft for these kids is that it itself has kind of an infrastructure. There are rules around how you can play. There are blocks, and you can build whatever you want, but within the confines of how the world works. And one of the great things about Minecraft is it's kind of filtered. So these kids are in there, and they're not worrying about facial cues. They're not worrying about, you know, what's happening around them in the physical world. They can kind of focus on the social play in the game.
You're saying to...
And we don't need to listen to any more of that. And the link is there if you would like to, because we have the Kate Ringland with us tonight. So, Kate, I just gave up control. If you want to take control of the screen, and I'll hand over to you.
Okay.
Yay! And thank you, Kate, for staying up till 9 p.m. to join us.
Yeah, no problem. All right. Thank you. Introduction. Oh, I'm hearing an echo of myself.
Oh, I might mute myself.
Okay. All right. Yes, better. Excellent.
So yes, I'm Kate Ringland. I have a PhD in informatics from the University of California, Irvine, and I'm currently a postdoctoral fellow at the University of California, Santa Cruz. And I focus a lot on games and online spaces for kids with disabilities. And I've done a lot of work specifically in Minecraft, as was shown in that video, and as I will talk about right now. So I'm here to talk about some of kind of the potentials of online spaces like Minecraft. So I wanted to take a step back and talk a little bit about kind of this word spaces. Spaces are important here because this is where the action is happening. Oftentimes when we think about spaces, we're thinking about spaces that are physically constructed, but we can also think about spaces as being socially constructed. So you might think about a classroom, or, you know, the kitchen, or this particular call that we're on right now. These are all different kinds of spaces where there are social interactions happening, and there are rules in place and norms about how we interact in these spaces, and all that good stuff. But then when we take into consideration disability, we have to start looking at these spaces as places of access. So are these spaces accessible for folks? Is there wheelchair access in a physical space? Probably in some places where it's required by law, but maybe not in other places. What's your lighting like in your space? What's the volume of your computer right now? How are things accessible for you? Do you need captioning? Do you need visual cues? So on and so forth. So you can kind of imagine how this line of questioning can then kind of be expanded into other social spaces and other kinds of engagements. And so, as is obvious because we're talking about Minecraft, this doesn't have to just be in the physical world. It can be in the digital or the virtual world. And in my work, I have found often that the physical and digital blur together, and it kind of becomes difficult to kind of differentiate between the two. And so those with disabilities often find, especially social spaces, can be challenging, and often there may not be full access to those social spaces. And obviously, we want children who are in learning spaces to have access to all the different social engagements, all the different learning opportunities. So in my work, I have studied a community called Otcraft, which I alluded to in the interview. So Otcraft is a very specific Minecraft community that's dedicated, according to their website, dedicated to providing a safe, fun learning environment for children on the autism spectrum and their families. So this is a space that's run completely by parent volunteers, and it's sustained by donations from community members. So it's completely community driven and run. The community itself welcomes autistic children as well as family and friends. So it's kind of autistic children plus allies of those children. And this community is run in the regular Java edition of Minecraft. It was founded long before Minecraft Education Edition existed. But a lot of the things I'm saying here work in all the different versions that exist of Minecraft. So I really was interested originally in Minecraft, partly because the software itself is super flexible and modifiable, so it's really easy to kind of get in there and make changes to it and see how that works out for the players. But it's also where I was finding these kids were being drawn to. So a lot of the kids in previous studies were all talking about Minecraft. So that's kind of, I followed their lead and to see where they were going and what they were playing with. So to give kind of an example of kind of the physical nature of Minecraft that I wanted to talk about today, I have to preface this by saying, so a lot of the neurodivergent kids that I've worked with have different sensory processing issues. So things like sights, sounds, touch might be overwhelming, for example. And then they have these, you may or may not be aware of these multi-sensory rooms where you can go and it helps calm a person down. It's filled with these lights and sounds. There's different And these can kind of be tailored to individual use. They don't all look this fancy, like the one in this slide is a fairly fancy one, but often these will be, you know, kind of tucked in the corner of a room or something. But what I was finding when I was doing my work in the ArtCraft community is that kids were kind of recreating these themselves in the Minecraft world. So I had one community member that I came across, and I wrote this in my field notes. So I came across a hole in the ground, like a small dark chamber just big enough for a character to stand inside. And a community member informed me that this was built to give them a sensory break. So when they went inside and plugged the top of the hole, their screen would go all black. And so what's interesting about this is the community member, the child, was feeling overwhelmed, but instead of deciding to kind of leave the ArtCraft world, like log out or turn off their monitor or close their computer down, instead of doing any of that, they took their avatar, their character, within the Minecraft world and created a dark space for themselves. So instead of completely disengaging from ArtCraft, they stayed engaged, but they were still able to kind of give themselves a sensory break. And so what happened is the adults, the administrators who are in charge of ArtCraft, they took note of this behavior and they chose to kind of create these more permanent sensory rooms within the ArtCraft world. So these are places that the community members can teleport to anytime they want to. So these different spaces took on kind of appearance of calm spaces within the physical world. So the one you're seeing on the screen here is just a library. So it's just a quiet library where somebody can go and they can sit kind of peacefully away from the activity and chatter of the rest of the world. What's kind of cool about this space is there you can kind of see in the back there's chests, and the community members actually would, you know, spontaneously write books while they were in here, and they'd leave the books for other people to read, tell stories, or there's a lot of texts about what it's like to be autistic and things like that. And another room looks like those multi-sensory rooms that I showed you a few slides ago. So there's different colored blocks, there's different kind of lights and sounds, and then there's actually also textures. So you get those spider webs, which are those kind of white blotchy things on the side there. And so the character can actually kind of get caught up in the spider web and it slows them down. But it's just the avatar experiencing that texture. The child themselves is not actually experiencing it, but they're kind of getting this secondary effect from that texture within this virtual space. And then another is a calm garden. There's some nice music playing here. And then finally, there's this kind of just dark room where you can go in and close the door and you kind of get that experience like digging a hole for yourself, but you're in a more of a real room instead of just a hole in the ground. So what I kind of found in the ArtCraft world is that you have these social rules, so the rules, the community agreed rules on the server, plus these technical supports and the kind of the infrastructure created by the Minecraft world that either comes with the Minecraft game or is added by the people administrating the world to kind of create this idea of community safety and support. And this was really done in this kind of cool cycle. So what I found is that the children would be playing around in the ArtCraft world. They'd be doing different things to kind of augment their own play spaces, like the child digging a hole. And Minecraft, of course, that's what it's meant to do. You're meant to kind of reconstruct it. You're meant to kind of build and do different things with it. But what was happening is then the adults would take notice of what was being modified and why the children were making these specific changes. And then when something seemed particularly useful, the administrators would then go and make those modifications more permanent. So like the sensory rooms. But this is done in a variety of ways. So it's not just changing the physical world of the server, but it's they would make changes to rules. They'd invent new games and so on and so forth. So what's kind of cool about this is that the cycle of kind of, augmenting their environment. It kind of becomes its own kind of play. So the younger community members are kind of playing around with the available materials, and then they are also having this very real impact on their environment. And so together, the adults and the children are making and recreating and refurbishing these social rules and the technical supports to work together to create safety and support in their community. And so kind of my two big takeaways for this little talk is that Minecraft spaces they have a very physical, albeit virtual, but physical nature to them. So you are in a world, you are there, and has a very physical nature. And that there's an opportunity here to kind of follow the children's leads and empower the children to be a part of the community. So like the bigger takeaway here that kind of stems from these two things is this is a very social space. This is a community. It's not just children randomly playing together in a world, but they are making friends. They're coming together and making decisions about what's important to their community. And with that, I do have contact information here, but also I am completely happy to take questions and have a discussion. And I will figure out again how I stop sharing the screen.
You can leave that up. We do have a question.
Okay. Excellent.
I have a question about whether the kids played in the dark spaces. Like when the child, how long would a child go into a hole or be in the dark spaces? Were they just withdrawing themselves for a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, from what I saw, I mean, I can't speak to all, I only observed what I could observe as one person, but from what I saw, it was like they would take a break. So they'd go in there for, a few minutes, 5 minutes. As all the sensory rooms, they would go there and they'd just it'd be taking a breather. And then when they'd calm down and felt better, then they'd come back out and re-engage with the community and come back to the game or whatever they were playing or doing at the time.
And there's a couple of people raised their hand. You're welcome to turn your mic on to ask a question. So
let Sarah go first.
Thank you. Well, mine's sort of related. So I was just wondering, those children or participants who were blocking themselves into that sensory room for, say, I don't know, 2 minutes, what did they physically do in your observations? Were they did they use any other calming strategies, or were they still fully immersed in the game physically? If you understand my question, does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand. Yes. So I don't have direct data on that because I was only observing what was happening in the virtual world. But I can say that many of them were still at least somewhat engaging in the chat and stuff. Yeah. So they were still connected, definitely. It wasn't like they walked away or weren't paying attention. They were still socially engaged.
Yeah, so it was more as a visual sensory thing. Yeah, but they didn't want to completely disconnect and lose track. Yeah, that's very interesting. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Matt?
Oh, my question was related actually to Sarah's. I was wondering whether Kate found out whether the student in their physical environment had turned down their lights or dimmed their lights in their room, or whether it was just their entire attention was on the screen, so that was sufficient to regulate their sensory environment.
Yeah. Yeah, obviously, again, I don't have really specific data. I do know that some kids talked about on the Octcraft forums and stuff, talking about kind of perfecting or making the best physical environment for themselves. So lots of discussion about what kind of lights to use and all that. Not necessarily specifically related to sensory breaks, but just generally what's the best way to game and have the perfect physical environment. So that was definitely a factor. Yeah.
It's really interesting. I spoke to some senior secondary school students who are also autistic, and they were talking about remote learning, how they were creating their ideal remote learning space. And there's such a diversity in what they thought was optimal for them in terms of sensory environment. So I'm curious to see if any other teachers here have any experience.
Welcome to take the microphone if you want to, or answer in the chat if you're being shy. I love that. I think you hit on a really important point, that the norms of the community were revisited over time. And I think that's a really important thing for classrooms, because a lot of our teachers have done get the kids to create the norms, the rules, the protocols for the community space. But I think you need to come back and revisit those regularly to see that they're still serving the community needs. You know, whether that's a year 3, 4 classroom, and it's still serving everybody's needs, because things will surface over time that may influence those rules. And yeah, I think that was a great point. All right, we might take that up in the chat in our forums, Matt, to see what teachers' other experiences were. I thought that was fascinating, though, and something I've never considered that we need to make space for is that kind of, you know, sensory space for kids. And, you know, these are obviously very cognizant children that are able to do this. You know, how do we get all our kids to be able to do that, to recognise when they need to withdraw from some level of to focus their attentional window, or to withdraw from the sensory experience. Yeah. Any advice on that, Kate? How we get the one child in our class, how do we serve that need?
I know that at least in the art craft world, there was a lot of coaching. So the parents who were kind of the volunteers on the administrating and moderating, there was a lot of like, you seem kind of overexcited right now, or you seem, you know, whatever it is, and do you need, like, a lot of checking in, do you need a break right now? Can we help you take a break right now? Things like that. So there is a lot of coaching and checking in on the kids.
And that's another great point. UCI Irvine's done research on Minecraft community spaces, and they found it was more important to train coaches than to train the kids. So you train coaches to not police the children, but to ask a question. Why do you think that? Why are you feeling like that? You know, to actually be able to facilitate a space rather than just police it. And I think that's something as teachers we really need to take on board. There's some really good research come out of Katie Salen's work in Minecraft. Yeah. Fabulous. Well, I need to just pop over to my slides for a sec, just to make sure I'm thank Kate. And you have all Kate's details here. And if you wanted any of her slides, we can make sure you get access to them.
Yes.
And probably to support some of that from both the research and the teaching and the first-hand perspective, we have Matt Harrison, and sorry, I've got your name wrong there, in my title, in my zest to get it out this afternoon. Sorry there, Matt, and Jess Rawlings. And I'm going to hand over to them to share their experience and research, and give us some further tips on how we can better serve all the students and create more inclusive classroom environments.
Thanks, Bron. Thank you for having us. It's great to join your community this afternoon. I'll just check. Can you see my screen?
I can see that.
Yeah, wonderful. And Jess, you're there as well. You've got off screen for me, but I assume you're still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
I thought I recognised you guys. I went to the MGSE a few years back. So there you go.
Oh,
nice. I'm pretty sure I heard some of your research. So anyway, I'll talk about it later. I'll listen now.
Yeah, wonderful. Good to see you, Sarah. So today we're just going to briefly touch on an introduction to using Minecraft as a space for inclusive play. Just to introduce you to the people I haven't met. Jess, would you like to begin?
Yep, so I'm Jess. I'm a speech pathologist by trade. My previous experience has been running social skills groups for kids with autism, but also kids with ADHD, any other comorbid conditions, using lots of art therapy, drama therapy, and music therapy mainly as a more hands-on approach than traditional social skills settings. I'm actually autistic myself, and I've got ADHD. Wasn't diagnosed until pretty late in life. So I was actually, one of these kids who is, I'm a huge gamer, so I would have really benefited from a lot of this stuff growing up.
Yeah, and my name is Matthew Harrison, as Bron introduced. I coordinate the Autism Intervention Program at the Melbourne Graduate School of Education. And just by pure chance, Jess and I crossed paths this year. And so we're both avid gamers. We both grew up sort of building a lot of our social connections through gaming. I grew up in the late 80s, early 90s. So probably playing, I thought, different games from Jess, but turns out Jess is also a huge Legend of Zelda fan. So that was pretty awesome. And we're both really interested in researching, implementing programs that use cooperative video games to develop collaborative social skills, building friendships and developing, I think this is really important, and I think I love the way that Kate emphasised this, developing that sense of belonging within our communities. So we're going to talk about two models today briefly. We're going to talk about inclusive play through the lens of this virtual playground model. And we're also going to talk about digital games-based intervention. And just to give you a really brief overview of this, digital games-based intervention is a more structured program around teaching collaborative social skills. And the virtual playground model is more the AltCraft model, which is really just a space where we support students to be able to express themselves and to be able to celebrate the differences of autism. And I'm going to let Jess to talk a little bit about Yellowcraft and this virtual playgrounds model.
Yeah, so me and Matt have actually been doing some work in this virtual playground space. So for a bit of background on the virtual playground model, it's student-led and staff facilitators. We facilitate this environment for them and we support them basically. We don't instruct as such. The whole focus is really about encouraging social connection, belonging, friendships and acceptance, and celebrating the differences of autism and allowing neurodiverse players to connect and engage with each other. Some of the work we've done lately has been with the Yellow Ladybugs, which is a not-for-profit organisation supporting autistic girls and women. And we've actually set up Yellowcraft for them, which is very similar. It's similar to an AltCraft concept. But
we borrowed the idea of Kate and Stuart. Credit where credit's due.
Yeah, so we've been doing this, creating a Minecraft server using the Java edition, with some things in place to just minimise, as you said, controlling the environment to minimise any conflicts or that sort of thing. And we've created this server for their community to come on together and play and interact with each other, which has been really good.
Yeah, so just elaborating on what Jess said, one thing we really wanted and one thing we knew from the lessons from Kate's work was we want something that was community-led. So I think what Bron said is so important around the fact that as adults, and particularly myself as a neurotypical adult, we wanted to step back and support and facilitate, but not take over. We really wanted particularly the older girls and women to be able to take on leadership roles within the community and to really drive the direction of this program. And part of that was designing coming up with our ideas of community values and expected behaviours. We wanted to really co-design this. And this means working with them, with the autistic community, to really take charge of this process and to make sure that the values and the behaviours, expected behaviours within our community reflected what really mattered to them. So Kate talked a bit about the idea of these mechanical rules of the game. There's also this idea of social norms. What are the norms of the server? How do we expect players to interact with each other? And we wanted to do it in a way that really celebrated the differences of autism. So we asked them, we said, what do you think is important in making sure everyone has fun? And we took fun as a universal concept. That's why people wanted to join this group, was to actually have fun, be motivated to turn up and to connect with other people. So we actually sent out an open-ended survey. We compiled a whole lot of values. And this is an example, not from Yellowcraft, but from another project I was working on, where we actually wanted to find out how players can always be safe, how they can always act responsibly, and what mattered to them in terms of showing respect across playing together in the shared physical inner room, using the voice or text chat, including on Discord, and playing in the virtual game world. So we wanted to use the language of the students. So the language in this matrix, this expected behaviours matrix, is from the students who responded to the survey, and they actually voted on it. And it was a democratic process where if there was a big, if there's an area of controversy, we'd bring people together and we would just sit back and facilitate the building of consensus. this is very similar to what we did for Yellowcraft, is we wanted them, the rules to reflect what mattered to them, not what we thought the rules should be. And it was a wonder. I mean, Jess, I think it was just one of those experiences where kids surprise you about how much they can do and how much they can tell you and how much they can really take ownership of this community.
And I think also quite note that a lot of our survey responses from the Yellowcraft girls and kids, a lot of them were very similar. So there was really common themes across all the responses. Like a lot of these kids were very much on the same track when we asked them, you know, what do you think needs to happen so that you enjoy this time?
Yeah, so as a practical recommendation, I think Brian and Kate have both made this point, ask the kids, what do they think? What do they think is important? What's valuable? And I think that's been one of the big lessons for me is to really trust in the ability of the community to come together and lead themselves and just give them the space and the tools to become self-advocates. And Jess, we have our other model, the digital games-based intervention model. Just want to explain this.
Yeah, so as Matt said, the digital games-based model it's more structured. And it's more focused around teaching social skills. So it's a structured program, and like we still, you know, the student voice still matters, of course. It's we use things like visual supports, and we are more in an interventionist role. So for teaching staff, allied health workers. The system is co-designed with students who have neurological differences, but in doing this, we use video games as a vessel to teach social skills and, you know, strategies to navigate a neurotypical world. So the games are not as teaching as such, they're more the medium through which we teach through. And yeah, we explicitly teach through skill acquisition and coach these kids to support their skill development and performance.
So we don't have much time. Just to give you an overview, and Sarah might have already seen this from her time at the Melbourne Graduate School, but we look at using video modelling and video review as a skill instruction. And then we actually, as interventionists, coach students during play. And then we facilitate guided reflection at the end of sessions. Now, we actually film the students in the physical and virtual spaces while they're playing. And then we use this video footage as a sort of replay where they can tell us why they've chosen to use or not use certain particular skills. And it helps us to better understand what is important to them. We've got students, I've just got a cat coming onto my keyboard, Jess. I'm very sorry, everyone. So did not expect this. And we also have, we use this video footage as a way to be able to track data and to be able to see which skills they're using. That's one measure of the frequency and duration of skill performance. It's just one measure of assessing whether the students are developing the skills. But what's really important is when we can show the footage back to the kids and ask them why they've chosen to use a skill or not use a skill, we can get really high level understandings of what they know and what really matters to them. And I just wanted to share this. I've radically changed my views on intervention. And that's because I've become friends with people like Jess who have lived experience of autism, and I've become friends with I've got colleagues who are autistic, and understanding that we really want to focus on this collaborative or functional social skills, the things that matter to everyone, like turn taking, or using your voice to get, or using your voice or using your communication device to give instructions or feedback. But we don't want to tell them how you would take a turn. What we want to do is we want to avoid normalizing cultural social skills like eye contact. We want to give people choices as to how you can show me you're listening. And this is really about creating an inclusive society where we actually value these differences. So just some quick practical tips for teaching staff. So we can create inclusive virtual playgrounds or digital games-based intervention sessions by letting players choose how they interact with the game and their peers. I did some research in a school in Melbourne, and we had students who just wanted to watch. These were students who were socially engaged, but they were pre-verbal, non-verbal students. They did not want to verbally communicate, but they want to use other forms of communication. And they really just enjoy just being there, that social connection with their peers who are playing Minecraft. We want to support multiple modes of communication, both verbal and non-verbal. You may see things like communication pod books. You may see things like augmentative and assistive communication apps on the iPad. It's really about opening up options. And we want to democratically design our community values and expected behaviours. And we really want to support a culture that values and doesn't privilege multiple input options. And so we can use things like the Microsoft Adaptive Controller. We can use things like the Wii U touchscreen controller. And it doesn't matter how you're playing. What matters is you're part of the community. I think that's my time, Bron. But thank you very much. And there's our contact details there. We'd love to hear from you.
We have 2 questions. Can people get a hold of your slides? Victoria, who's from Milton Specialist School, said has just started exploring with Minecraft and is really impressed. And Sarah has asked, have you done research in public and independent settings?
So, sorry, just to start with the slides. Yes, of course, I'll send those to you, Bron, and you can distribute to the community. I actually worked at Waratah. Was it Megan who I said worked at Melton? Who was
Victoria.
Victoria, sorry, Victoria. Yeah, I worked at Waratah Special Development School in Belfield. I've visited Melton, and we had a wonderful program starting up there using Minecraft. So I'm more than happy to share our experiences and some of the barriers we encountered. And the other question was from Sarah, was that right? Yeah. And that was around independent schools?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just interested. I work in the public sector and I'm always really interested in sort of accessibility. So I wrote a minor thesis in 2017 and I didn't include Minecraft as one of my educational technology interventions for teaching social skills, which is so embarrassing now, but it was because it wasn't free and I didn't want to include things that had a fee because I work at a school with very, very little money. So now that this is available for the entire department, sort of there's this amazing amount of funding, the resource is incredible. Ongoing, are you sort of hoping to get more data from public sector sort of schools as well?
I've only conducted research in public schools.
Okay,
I work at school. My school, we had 40% of students who were what we used to term low SES students.
That's where I am.
And I really see this as an equity issue. The fact is we need to support those students. The students who I work with and Jess work with, our passionate area is working with kids who have so much to offer, but they're systematically constrained by environmental factors that aren't outside of their control.
Yeah.
So I really think your area is so important. That's why I became a teacher. I think that's why Jess became a speechy, was to really change the game in this terms. I think it's it offers so much for your kids, Sarah. So I think all my research has been with your space.
Like I was just watching the whole thing. I was like embarrassed. I was like, yeah, I didn't think of that. Like, this is really good. This is great. Like, all of mine was all about like Smiling Mind and Class Dojo. It was mostly about Class Dojo, the specific, like, this is how you show empathy. This is what empathy is, because they don't actually know. So yeah, Minecraft's such a good opportunity for those ones who, I was saying, I have this one little boy last week and he's like the outcast. We literally had a meeting today about including him. And he, when Minecraft's on, he's like the coolest guy in the whole class. Like the popular girl goes into his world and they fight the Ender Dragon together and it's like, he's the cool kid. So there's, as you say, for these neurodivergent kids, the world itself, I mean, even just looking at it, it's beautiful. If you like structure, it's literally blocks. So the amount of kind of the ease with which he navigates that world is at such juxtaposition with the agony of his real life experience. It's awful to watch. And I just want to help him, as you say, and I feel like as this resource now is just opening up to these kids who need it, it's a really big opportunity. Like I'm considering coming back to do my PhD because I did a minor thesis. So like this is something I'm really interested in.
Come see me.
That's a program for you.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, I'll hit you up on Twitter and we'll figure it out. But yeah.
So, yeah. Wonderful. Just on that.
Brian.
Oh, sorry. You had a question from Brian. Yeah.
Brian has a question. I wondered if Brian wanted to take the microphone to ask it himself.
Sure. just in terms of some tips for supporting students who are just sort of beginning their journey in learning social skills and impulse control. We have a lot of students here, all of them have an intellectual disability, many with autism as well. But just the idea they might be so used to playing in their own space that then when they're in with other people, it's very challenging for them to not break or damage other people's builds and things like that. So just any tips in that area, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of times it's really talking about, like, sort of the underlying, the communicational function of the behaviour. So what are the kids trying to tell us about this? And a lot of times it's not understanding these concepts of this is someone else's building. And so I worked in a special development school, and Minecraft, these kids on paper, as we know, I find IQ a very problematic way of classifying kids, because these kids were brilliant at Minecraft and they had real strength in gaming knowledge. And so, Brian, what we do is video modelling, where we showed some of the students some different ways they can ask if they want to build in someone else's space. But also, once they started playing, they developed their own systems. But we started with video modelling. We said these are some ways, some strategies you can use if you want to build in someone's space, or if you want to ask for help. I used a help card. A lot of my students didn't speak. They're non-verbal, either through choice or they hadn't developmentally developed that sort of blending of phonemes yet. So we put in communication cards around the help card and a break card. Velcroed onto the table. If they're feeling agitated, we use video modelling to teach them to use the break card, and then they could go and have a break in the physical space, or we could actually put them into their own virtual space for a little bit of time, and then they could come back. It was really just teaching them those strategies through video modelling to self-regulate their behaviour. Jess, do you have anything? You're the speechy. I want to...
I think you've definitely touched on it, like especially with the visual supports, and yeah, just alternative ways of communicating is the big one. Like the break cards are a great idea. The kids don't have to specify, hey, I want a break. They can just take it and go, and it just removes, that sort of level of stress for them. The other ones we tend to use lots of visual supports, as again touching on that, we use lots of them. So the big one we had for social skills this summer was actually a full wall poster of like the community rules that everybody had agreed to at the start of the week. And it worked well because we could actually refer the kids back to them and say, guys, like this is what you agreed on and this is what you want this place to be. What can we do as a group to make this happen? And I think, bringing the kids into it, keeping their voice is the biggest bit, I think, is the biggest thing of it, giving them the autonomy and the flexibility.
Brian, just an interesting point there. When I first became a teacher, it was my first year teaching was 2008, and I was in a mainstream school, and I'm a massive, as I've said before, I'm a massive gamer, and I really was hesitant to bring gaming in because I was worried whether I'd be perceived as a serious teacher or not. But I had 6 kids in my class who were funded, and one of my students had an intellectual disability. And I remember the first time we did a unit called Now and Then, which was about, and to show that I brought in, it was in the old humanities curriculum, I brought in a range of video game consoles from over the era. And some of my students who had been labelled as being not academically capable had some of the most amazing answers around what has changed in terms of technology when the Wii, which was the console at the time that everyone had to have, and my original NES. But it was just so exciting. And that was the first time I saw one of my student who had diagnosis of Down syndrome being seen as not the kid with Down syndrome, but as the kid who is a really, really good player at Mario. He was phenomenal at playing the original Mario Brothers. And it was one of those things, kids were inviting him to come and participate in other activities. He was being accepted for being who he is and for his strengths. And so I think when we bring gaming into, particularly for students with complex disabilities, we actually can really see some of these talents which we didn't know were there. And I'm sure you're starting to see that in your school. And that's why I became really excited about gaming and the potential for it to be a vehicle for social inclusion. So I think you're on the right track, right? give me an email. I worked in SDS. I can definitely understand the challenges. I'll help you to share some of the barriers that I hit and how I overcame those. So yeah, anyone else, Victoria, same thing. If you need any help, I can give you some of my war stories and some of the barriers we hit and how we overcome a lot of the administrative hurdles sometimes.
We'll make sure everyone has the contact details to
great,
because that's great. And as we've alluded, this is a kind of taster event to something more significant we might do next year to get us rolling on really making sure we include all our students' voices. I mean, when we say student voice, it can't just be a lump. We have to see those kids as individuals. I want to move on, just to move on to a couple of things that really segue nicely into what we were just talking about. Let me just get my PowerPoint back up. And I've corrected your name, Matt. So, and it's corrected on the PDF.
No worries, Ron, that's fine.
While we've been talking. So, yeah, just to make sure everything's correct. But I wanted to show very quickly, this is a resource from a colleague, Dan Hassler, brilliant guy, works in growth mindset and personal development. And he created this little tool that he used with kids, and you can attach it to any Minecraft experience. He was working with children who had behavioural issues. So children who were, having anger management issues or other self-control issues in the classroom. And he just got them to play something in Minecraft, to be collaborative, to work together with other people, and then look at the left-hand side of this instrument and tick off the things they were able to do in Minecraft. And then, identify the skills they had that they could use in Minecraft. So that was that left-hand side. That was being reflective about what is it I could do in Minecraft. And then getting them to look on the right-hand side and say, okay, well, in my physical classroom, sometimes I struggle with, and to identify something they have a hard time with, whether that's anger management or asking for help or recognizing you've made a mistake and so on. And then perhaps I could apply my Minecraft mindset and then recognizing how could they transfer how they behaved in Minecraft, being collaborative, because often we find kids who are not collaborative in the physical world can be very collaborative and mentoring in the virtual world. And so got them to identify how they could transfer those skills across. Now, I used this with some kids who were separated from their class because they had anger management issues, and I got them to design a game about bullying, anti-bullying game in Minecraft. Now, the interesting thing was when we talk about rules, these kids knew the rules. They knew what bullying was, and they knew why you shouldn't do it. And they were cognizant of all of that. But getting them to design the game was a fascinating experience for them to be able to articulate things and to talk about things. And I wasn't ever asking them, have you been the bully? They just assumed I was there to help teach them Minecraft. But it was a fascinating listen to the kids and hear what they were saying about designing a game and what rules the game would have to overcome bullying. A really fun experience. So this is a really nice little tool that you can use with kids. I'm going to jump quickly to a story that I think first is more important, and we'll come back to the last little hands-on bit. And this is a story from Aspendale School that Arden Johnston sent me today. And he had
right near me, my neck of the woods.
Yeah, and they had a student who wasn't thriving in remote learning. He wasn't showing up to morning check-ins. He wasn't appearing in the classes he was supposed to be. He was really withdrawing from all of his class remote activity. And Arden suggested to the teaching assistant teacher's aide that perhaps because this kid was a great Minecrafter, it might be useful for him, Steve, who the kids call Mr. B, to go and meet him in a Minecraft world instead, and to try and engage him in that space. And so the TA and the student were meeting up 3 times a week for sometimes over an hour to work on a challenge together. And the TA would ask questions and chat with the student as they were working, and to just discuss where they were at, what was happening, you know, chit chat and the build and the challenge, and never leaving the challenge complete at the end of the session. So there was something left hanging. So the student would want to come back at the end of the session. And so it was coming up to the child's birthday, and Steve, the TA, built a world that had a house in it, and he built this happy birthday sign, and the child spawned inside the house and then opened the door and came out and saw this enormous pixel art sign, happy birthday. And then was, because he was a huge lover of Sonic, he was then motivated to build his own Sonic. Now, this is a child who had largely withdrawn from learning, who was now willing to engage with, coming back to that point about a trusted adult in an online space that was getting him back into a love of learning. And it was a chance for the teacher to show him some caring, some affection, this lovely little treat for his birthday. And I think this is such a layered and nuanced story. I have shared it in our community space, and I just wanted to make sure, you know, everyone thought about something like this for those students who we're not reaching. They're not failing, we're failing them. And Minecraft could be the tool that you could use to reach them. We're going to just spend a couple of seconds in the considering the Microsoft Immersive Reader. Now, we've talked about children in autism and other neurodevice areas. We've talked about kids with behavioural issues. And now I think we need to see that we do have some tools inside Minecraft where we can look at reducing the literacy burden for children, or reaching kids with languages other than English. And so the Microsoft Immersive Reader is a tool that I just think is the biggest unsung hero in the Microsoft suite of tools ever. And so let's have a quick look at that. I'm just going to bring up, I actually was naughty and closed my Minecraft, so I have to just get that back up while we were talking, silly me. And I'm just going to bring that up. And just show you how we can get to the reader. And we did mention it last week's session, but I think it's important to see it now. Can you see my Minecraft screen?
Yep. Okay.
And by the way, Minecraft upgraded today, and it's now version 1.14.50. So if you want to use it with your students, be careful that you're all in the same version. So I'm just going to pop over to the library and have a look at the biomes and featured worlds, and where we'll find Build with Bees. And you can read the discussion things there. Now, Minecraft, the Microsoft Immersive Reader isn't in every tool yet, but if we all love it to death, they might make sure it is. And I think that's an important point. To test it out, to see what you think about it. And if we walk in this space, we'll see Poppy, who's over here, who's going to tell us about this garden simulation that we can explore. Now, Poppy is an agent, and last week in our session, we learned how to program agents. So she's an instrument of interaction with the world. And you'll see she pops up with some discussion. And I'm going to hand over to Lauren to just guide us through this.
Yeah, thanks, Bron. Okay, so in the bottom corner of Poppy's picture, there's a little book with a speaker on it. If you click on that, Bron, that should open up the Immersive Reader tool. And you'll see that it takes you into a different screen. Oh, yep, we're back. And what you can do is you can press play at the bottom and it will read the text out to you. Oh, we can't hear your volume, Bron, but that's okay. It does read out, I promise. The other things you can do in Immersive Reader, if I just get...
Watch the bees pollinate the food, flowers.
Thanks, Bron. That's it.
Reset to watch it all again.
Excellent. At the top of that immersive reader tool, if you click on, Bron, the two A's, so you get some options here to change the text size. If you want the font to be bigger so that it's easier to read, you can do that. You can make it smaller too. You can increase the spacing or decrease it. And that's between the lines. You can change font and you can change the colour of the backgrounds and text, which can be handy if you need a different colour filter. Thanks, Bron. If you click at the top with the magic wand, Bron, that's some grammar options. So if you would like to, you can highlight some nouns, verbs, adjectives and adverbs, and it will colour code them, and it will break down words into syllables too. And the last one, which is my favourite one, is the book. Thanks, Bron. So you can change the line focus if you would like to. So if you click on one of those, it just slims the text down. The picture dictionary is linked to Boardmaker, which is one of them. We actually give that out to schools as part of the department's software. It's a really good feature in Minecraft. If you click on a word, Bron, and there may be on the word button, you should get a picture of a button as well as the option to click on the speaker and it will read the word to you.
Button.
Thank you. And if you click on the book again, there we go. You can also ask the immersive reader tool to translate text into a different language. There's lots of languages in there and I've heard it's very accurate. We tested out French last week and someone else in the room could speak French and said it was very good. And you can decide whether you want to translate all the text into a different language or you can translate it by word.
Καλώς ήρθατε στον κήπο επίδειξης. Χρησιμοποιήστε το παρακάτω κουμπί για να δείτε το αγρόκτημά μας να μεγαλώνει ακριβώς μπροστά στα μάτια.
Thanks, Bron. Matt, have you got a question?
I was just going to say, Lauren, what I found really cool was that it actually links to the Boardmaker visual, the PCS, the picture communication symbols. So for Victoria and maybe, I think it was Chris or Brian, sorry, who were working with in schools where students are using augmented forms of communication, it will be consistent between Minecraft and their communication books if they're using Boardmaker, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So the point being that this is a really interesting tool that we can be using to support our students, whether you want to change visual filters for partially sighted students. You know, there's a lot of advice we can be using to set up things and make them make the learning more accessible to all our learners. And I just think this is a really unsung little tool. And anywhere you find that symbol, the little book, that means immersive reader is plugged in to that space. And so you can use that in any of those spaces. It doesn't read boards in Minecraft at the moment, but it does read books and portfolios and loads of other places where the children will write. And so they can be writing and have Minecraft read back to them what they wrote. And they can, you know, be editing their work by listening to it back. So, or they can be reading along with the audio. So loads and loads of cool ways you could be using this tool. Any questions? Anyone want to raise anything about that? And most people don't, which is what scares me, because it's such a lovely tool. And I know Travis Smith from Microsoft has shown at quite a few conferences. It's a really lovely tool. Okay, so we did our Aspendale story, and just to remind us that Microsoft Immersive Reader is in OneNote, Word, Outlook, and all those other spaces. We could use it in Teams, and it's available in Flipgrid, which is really cool. So lots of other places. We have a space in our community space for us to discuss further how we can be helping to make our classrooms more inclusive and meet the individual needs of all the individual needs of our students. So please jump in. I've shared an article there from CNAT, which is really nice. It's an Australian school, and it talks about how children on the spectrum are being provided with ways to build healthy social lives. And I think it's a really nice, well thought out article. I wanted to remind everyone in the community and watching that we're on our journey through to our certified Minecraft certified educator. And if you come to next week's session on coding, you'll be pretty much into this advanced, apply and enrich set of points. We're planning, Lauren and I, we're plotting to have a graduation ceremony at the end of the year and to be able to give as many teachers as have earned them the Minecraft Certified Teacher Badge, because we can do that. We would love to be giving it to very many teachers in our community. If you're not sure where you are, download the PDF and you can get to this link and jump on and have a look. There are 11 modules to become a certified teacher. And you can, if you're pretty sure you know the content, just do the quiz and do the quiz in each section that you think you're aware of, and just pick up the learning module for the ones you may not yet have explored. But if you do next week, I think other than the science toolkit, you will have covered most of the content in those 11 units. Our next session is on coding for beginners, and that is a really, really beginner's coding. You can come with no knowledge of coding and no knowledge of how it plugs into Minecraft. The whole session is going to be hands-on. And so we hope you'll come and have a little bit of fun with us and start coding and making mischief with agents in Minecraft. So are there any questions on any of that content or where we're going, happening? We will post the recording of this session later tonight as soon as we finish. And so if you have colleagues who would want to join in the dialogue or to know more about Matt or Kate or Jessica, Jess, please follow up with them. You can probably show the video at a staff meeting and get everyone engaged. Any questions? Oh, I love that. The child in your class offered to build you the Eiffel Tower, Sarah.
It's very cute. He's the one I was talking about who, we had to have a meeting today. He was very upset. And so we missed our Minecraft time because we had to have real life circle time. But they seem to understand the trade-off. But yeah, he was like, oh, well, you can't go, so we'll build it in Minecraft. I just thought, the show of empathy that is, and so I was like, oh, cool, well, there's elevators. And then he was really excited, how are we going to code the elevators? And I'm there, and he lets me in, and I start punching it, knock the whole thing down because I can't tell left from right. He was not happy. He was nice about it, but he expelled me from the world. He was very polite, but he was like, please leave. So, and I love that. I love because I like them to see me as a learner. I'm modeling an appropriate way to learn. And, I'm like, yeah, kick me out. I'm ruining it. That's fine. I'll go away and do this. And I tell them, I've got my Minecraft class and I leave early on a Wednesday. So they're really on board with it. So they've been nagging me to do my portal for the homework from week 1 that I still haven't done. So I will try and figure that out.
Oh, good. I'm glad they're nagging you.
They are. They're really they keep asking me about it. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll do it. I've got to write their reports first, but once I do that, I'll be able to do it. So yeah, but no, it's been really good, and I'm very much a theory person. So for me, the theory gives me the confidence to have a go at the practical side. So yeah, this has been really useful. So thank you very much.
And I want to say thank you to Kate for staying up, for being here late. Did your daughter go to bed, or is she still hiding there?
No, yeah, she got tucked off into bed.
And Matt and Jess and all of you who are able to join us or listening in after the event, thank you so much. I think this is such an important topic. We hope to revisit it on a larger scale next year to look at how we can be including all student voice in our classrooms and making sure everyone loves learning. And I think that's such a really brilliant topic. And thank you, Brian, for bringing up that idea that some of these kids are not perhaps as articulate or as ready to recognise their own issues as the kids in Ortcraft obviously were. But I've never thought about it, but maybe we need to get kids to design a sensory room in our worlds, and get the kids who understand that best to be the ones to design it.
Yeah, no, thanks, Brian. Thanks for having us. It's just a wonderful group you've got here.
Yeah, we have fun, and they're good people. Oh, brilliant teachers, of course. Victorian teachers are brilliant, said she from New South Wales. I've really loved all the teachers that we have in our community. They're all to do whatever it takes to make sure kids are getting the best of learning. So,
right.
And thank you all. And I'll make sure to send on contact details so people can follow up. I know, Jess, you and Matt are speaking at the DLTV event in December, is it?
Yes.
Yeah. So if people want to follow up and hear some more of you, they can do that there. And I know Kate has plenty of resource online that we'll make sure people get a chance to have a look at and read.
Great.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
I will turn off the recording.